We have farmed the land and failed. Food and fuel prices are out of control. Crops are failing, and fossil fuels and famine. Fossil fuels have been exhausted. The question is, are drought and famine acceptable failures? Deserts are expanding. People are forced to abandon their land. Pollution is the consequence of our consume and dump mentality. Flash floods and forest fires are becoming all too familiar, as uneven distribution of rainfall wreaks havoc. Erosion of topsoil spills into rivers and pours into the ocean, along with wastewater from our toilets. If business as usual remains unchecked, our very survival is threatened, and we are destined to go the way of the dinosaurs. As the originator of Operation OASIS and a dedicated environmental engineer, I would like you to understand that we have the capacity to change our direction. But first I need you to understand why the rains failed again in Ethiopia and Somalia. When forest and vegetation is stripped from the coastlines of a continent, clouds are prohibited from crossing onto the land due to heated air or thermals rising from the exposed hot arid desert sands. The problem is that deserts are devoid of renewable water and aquifers are salty and depleted. We must connect the world's arid coastlines with the wastewater we discharge into our oceans and rivers to transform them into productive rainforests and agroforestry, using the shipping supply chain which ships around 5 billion tonnes of seawater as ballast each year. To restore arid lands, we will need an endless supply of billions of tonnes of salt-free water and organic matter to build soil structure, so that it has the capacity to retain water. Sewage and wastewater has all of the components required to succeed. Developed and developing countries are all guilty of pouring billions of tonnes of treated and raw sewage into the oceans and rivers every single day. We eat the fish that lives in it, and we frequently bathe in someone else's end products. So why not clean up the coastlines and restore the deserts instead? A supertanker has to take on ballast water in order to return back to a desert port. Discharging seawater ballast has introduced invasive marine species which have devastated fish stocks. Ballast sterilisation plant is said to add billions of dollars to the cost of fuel, and there is no guarantee that it will be effective. It is akin to closing the stable door when the horse has already bolted. The OASIS pipeline is already in place. Super crude oil tankers transport around 100,000 tonnes of seawater back to the desert coastal waters and discharge it into the sea. This waste of fuel and resources is ludicrous. Substitute the seawater for treated wastewater and we can feed the starving millions by enabling them to grow their own food while they help to convert the arid lands into lush, fertile tropical rainforests. When this photograph was taken, there were six tankers in Torbay, right next to a big sewage outfall pipe. With treated wastewater, irrigating deserts, we will sustain forestry and agroforestry without making any significant changes to routine trading practices. We therefore eliminate the pollution from the coast of the donor countries and the ballast pollution at the coast of the recipient countries. This feasible and sustainable approach has the potential to arrest climate change when scaled up. This picture is the RLC. The government decided that the water was better used for irrigation. They irrigated the land and prevented the fresh water from running into the sea. The sea became sterile. The sea started to empty. The salty soil was blown onto the irrigated land. That killed off the crops. We ended up with no fish, no sea, and no irrigation. But we seldom see what happens when we get it right with desert reclamation projects. Gunter Pauli, Darwin, Willie Schmidt, Harry Hart, and many others have observed increased rainfall following reforestation. Gunter reported a 10% increase in rainfall after the land was reforested in Colombia. He stated that investing in this land was more financially rewarding than investing the same money in Microsoft from the onset. The Ascension Island example from Dr. Wilkinson is difficult to ignore. So why is it so difficult to be heard? Arid coastlines heat up rapidly in the day. Thermals rise high into the atmosphere, forming an effective barrier against incoming clouds and moisture. Fog rolls around the coastline but cannot cross onto the land during the hot daytime. Clouds roll along the arid coastlines and release precipitation over densely vegetated areas. We are seeing more flash floods as a result of uneven rainfall distribution. Logically, if less rain is falling in one region, more rain must fall in another. I filmed the thermal barrier in Paynton, a narrow strip of trees as wide as a dual carriageway running perpendicular to the coast on a hot day is sufficient to draw in the fog banks stuck on the coastline during the summer months. The heated concrete coastal road and treeless areas prevent the fog from crossing over at any other point. One side of the hot concrete coastal road is bright sunshine, the other side is engulfed by dense fog. In Mexico and many other desert regions, it is common for banks of fog to remain over the sea and hugging the coastline. What would happen if the thermal barrier was moved inland by planting coastal forests? It's not rocket science, is it? We have been using nets to catch coastal fog, yes, nets, for thousands of years, mimicking the action of trees. Today, fogs are used in many regions where water is scarce. Fog nets, sorry. If fog nets were used to surround land irrigated with wastewater, they would provide a workforce and animals with perfectly safe potable water by recycling the evaporated wastewater. The Hadley cell, it's, as Greg stated earlier, it's a circulatory pattern that moves, it's an air conveyor belt which dumps the precipitation over the Central African region. The Hadley cell circulates air from the north and south coast to the equator, relieving all precipitation over the Central African green belt. The air that moves over the desert is dry, but it could be wet. If we introduce billions of tons of treated wastewater to the coastline of North Africa, the clouds we create, together with the incoming moisture from the sea drawn in by the trees and moist soils, will be pulled into the Hadley cell and migrate towards the sub-Saharan regions, shielding the sun from the land as they travel on this atmospheric conveyor belt, cooling the climate and blotting out the sun. Where do we get the trees from? Well, this simple project, A Pocketful of Acorns, was conceived to demonstrate the economy of scale while planting trees by mobilising and motivating people, just like yourselves, to obtain permission to transform unproductive land into biodiversity-rich woodlands through all media outlets. The objectives of the project were to show how large-scale reforestation can be achieved on a very small budget by engaging people on a volunteer basis to gather native tree seeds and saplings to plant directly into the soil on permitted land, or to germinate seeds and grow them in containers at home until permission is obtained. Involving the people and communities in any country is essential for successful land restoration projects, because once the public have been engaged in planting trees and observe the results from their labour, they inevitably become guardians for the new woodlands and forests and regularly visit the reclaimed land. The Kennels Road planting took place in '94. This is in my area, Torquay. This is the same stretch of road today. The cost of the planting, £0. In Cockington we now have a rich biodiverse 5-acre woodland thanks to Dominic Ackland at Devon Coast and Woodland Trust. This soil was full of stones and very difficult to dig, so was turned over to nature. A pocketful of acorns helped to restore this land, the very young together with the very old, armed with spades, saplings and seeds, following a call in the local newspapers. Today this woodland is 15 feet tall. Today this woodland is 15 feet tall and teeming with life. Next slide. The trees planted for free now dwarf the gates of the same barren, unproductive land. The rich, diverse soil has fungi and trees have self-seeded. We are planning to use this approach to stabilise the coastline of East Anglia, where properties and farmland are falling into the sea at an alarming rate. The government's plan is to let nature take its course. The sacrifice to communities properties in this region can be purchased for £1. We are talking to Spain's government to implement a pilot demonstration in Spain's arid coastline. The barren farmland where topsoil was washed away is now full of rich organic humus from broadleaf deciduous trees. Insect, bird and animal droppings have triggered natural soil restoration and seed dispersal. With a little help, nature can restore the destruction that we have caused without humans having to perish before it happens. My question to everyone in this room today is, when can we make this happen? Thank you.